You did 5 things this morning that would have killed you in 1880. You drank a glass of water. You ate breakfast. You put on clean clothes. You stepped outside. And you did all of it without once thinking any of it might be the last thing you ever did. On the American frontier, every single one of those acts carried a genuine chance of putting you in the ground. Not in a year, not in a month, in a week. We have been telling the wrong story about the West for over a century. The mythology gives us gunfights at high noon, outlaws on horseback, sheriffs with silver stars staring down killers in the middle of a dusty street. And the documented record, the court files, the army surgeon reports, the letters women wrote home to their mothers in Ohio, tells us something the movies never bothered with. The most dangerous things on the frontier fit in a drinking cup, sat on your dinner plate, and lived in the shirt on your back. Robert Dykstra spent years going through the records of 5 Kansas cattle towns: Abilene, Ellsworth, Wichita, Dodge City, Caldwell, and found a combined total of 45 homicides across all 5 towns during their peak cattle trade years. That is roughly 1.5 killings per town per year. You were not likely to die in a gunfight. You were likely to die from what you swallowed. Start with water, the most basic human need, the thing you do before your eyes are fully open in the morning. You walk to your kitchen, you turn a handle, and clean water comes out. It has been filtered, treated, tested, and delivered through sealed pipes. Now take all of that away. Every layer, gone. What you have left is a shallow well dug by hand into dirt, lined with rough stone, no concrete cap, the ground around it trampled to mud. 30 feet away sits an outhouse. 50 feet in the other direction, a livestock pen. The water you pull up in a wooden bucket is slightly cloudy. There is sediment settling at the bottom. It smells faintly of earth, maybe something sharper underneath. You drink it because there is nothing else to drink. Conevry Bolton Valencius, who spent years with frontier medical records and personal correspondence, documented that waterborne illness was the single most common category of disease complaint across the trans-Mississippi West. Cholera, typhoid, dysentery. They moved through settlement after settlement like a second kind of weather. One Kansas pioneer woman, her testimony preserved in the State Historical Society manuscripts, recalled hauling water from a creek a mile away because they had no well. "The creek water gave the children the bloody flux," she said, "and for 2 weeks I thought I would lose them all." The first water filtration plant in the United States was built in Poughkeepsie, New York, in 1872. No frontier town had anything like it. Not one. A modern stomach, accustomed to treated municipal water, would have virtually no tolerance for the microbial load of an 1880s frontier well. Severe dysentery could begin within 72 hours of your first drink. Cholera could kill you through dehydration in days. The deadliest thing in any frontier town fit in a tin cup. Now suppose the water makes you sick. Suppose you are gripping the edge of a bed frame, hollowed out by cramps and fever, and someone says they will fetch the doctor. On the frontier, this was not rescue. It was a coin flip, and the coin was weighted against you. Medical licensing in Western territories during the 1870s and 1880s was effectively non-existent. Paul Starr's research confirms it. Anyone could hang a shingle. The doctor who walked through your door might have attended a medical school back east, or he might have read a book and bought a bag. Either way, what he practiced was likely what the period called heroic medicine. Aggressive purging, copious bloodletting, and massive doses of calomel, which is mercurous chloride. Mercury. Your doctor was dosing you with mercury and believed he was saving your life. William Rothstein's study of 19th century American physicians confirms that this approach remained standard among many frontier practitioners well into the 1880s, years after it had begun falling out of favor in Eastern schools. If your condition required surgery, the operating room was a kitchen table covered with a stained cloth, lit by an oil lamp. Joseph Lister had published his antiseptic principles in 1867. They had not arrived here. The instruments were metal, but not sterilized. The surgeon's hands were washed, maybe, but not in anything that would kill bacteria. Robert Karolowitz, surveying frontier surgical accounts, found individual surgeons whose amputation patients died at rates those surgeons themselves recorded as routine. Seeing the doctor was often more dangerous than the disease that brought you there. So you survive the water. You avoid the doctor. Now you need to eat. Look at the plate in front of you. A slab of salt pork, gray-white, glistening with crystallized salt. A piece of hardtack dense enough to crack a tooth, possibly with weevil holes bored through it. Black coffee in a tin cup, brewed directly over coals, opaque as river mud. No vegetables, no fruit, nothing fresh. This is not a meal. It is fuel, and it is failing you. Andy Adams, who lived the cattle drive life and wrote about it later, described weeks of nothing but beans, bacon, and coffee. Kenneth Carpenter's History of Scurvy documents that the disease appeared regularly among frontier populations cut off from fresh produce, on cattle drives, in mining camps, in homesteads snowed in for winter. After roughly 4 to 6 weeks without vitamin C, your gums begin to bleed. Your teeth loosen. Old wounds, long healed, crack open again. Your body is disassembling itself from the inside. And that is just the nutritional failure. The contamination was its own category of danger. Unrefrigerated meat in summer temperatures spoiled rapidly, and nobody understood bacterial contamination. Botulism from improperly canned goods was becoming a recognized hazard as commercial canning spread through the 1870s and 1880s. A modern stomach, trained on refrigerated and inspected food, would rebel violently against what the frontier considered a normal supper. The frontier diet was not merely inadequate. It was actively dismantling your body one missing vitamin at a time. Here is something most people have never considered. You are lying in bed tonight in a room where the temperature holds steady at 68 degrees, regardless of what is happening outside your walls. Now put yourself inside a sod house on the Nebraska plains in January. The walls are packed earth with grass roots poking through. The floor is dirt. Above you, a sod ceiling supported by wooden beams sifts fine soil onto your blanket when the wind picks up. You have a quilt and, if you are fortunate, a buffalo robe. The only heat comes from a stove that will burn out before dawn if no one feeds it. Outside, it is 20 below zero. The wind is finding every gap around the doorframe, every crack where the sod has shifted. Joanna Stratton compiled the recollections of Kansas pioneer women who described waking to find snow that had blown through the walls and was covering their bedding. In January of 1888, what David Laskin called the children's blizzard dropped temperatures roughly 40 degrees in a matter of hours across the Dakota Territory, Nebraska, and Kansas. 235 people died, many of them freezing to death in the space between their front door and their barn. A wall made of dirt was all that stood between you and that kind of night. If you have been keeping count, we are still inside the things you did before leaving the house this morning, and we have not yet reached the one that might unsettle you most. Think about the last time you got a small cut, a thorn while gardening, a nick from a kitchen knife, a paper cut. You washed it, maybe put a bandage on, probably forgot about it within an hour. Now place that identical wound on your hand in 1880. You do not wash it with antiseptic because antiseptic is not in your vocabulary. You might pack it with a poultice of mud or chewing tobacco, remedies that introduce more bacteria into the opening. Antibiotics will not exist for another half-century. The bacterium Clostridium tetani lives in every handful of frontier soil, in every piece of rusty equipment, in the manure caked on your boots. Before vaccination, which would not arrive until the 1920s, clinical tetanus killed between 30 and 90% of those who contracted it, depending on the era and the care available. Karlovitz documented cases of fatal septicemia originating from injuries as minor as a thorn puncture or a blister from a new boot. Imagine watching red streaks begin to track up your forearm from a scratch you got mending fence wire. Those red lines are lymphangitis, visible evidence that infection is moving toward your heart. There is no drug on the planet that can stop it. The paper cut you forgot about by lunchtime could have been a death sentence 140 years ago. Now I want to ask you something. If every one of these dangers surprises you, what does that tell you about the distance between your life and theirs? Not in years, in infrastructure. Every item on this list is something that was solved not by courage, not by grit, but by plumbing and refrigeration and a scientific theory about organisms too small to see. That is the real story of the frontier, not the absence of civilization, but the absence of systems so fundamental that you have never once in your life had to think about them. If something in this list has changed how you see that distance, I want to hear which one. Tell me in the comments. Milk. Think about the glass you poured this morning. Cold, white, from a sealed container that was pasteurized at a processing plant and refrigerated from the moment it left the cow. Louis Pasteur demonstrated the pasteurization process in 1864. Commercial adoption in the United States would not come for decades. On the frontier, milk came from a cow that had not been inspected, not been tested for tuberculosis, and was stored in a ceramic pitcher or glass bottle at room temperature. Melanie Dupuy documented that raw, unpasteurized milk was a major disease vector throughout the 19th century. Bovine tuberculosis, brucellosis, typhoid, scarlet fever, diphtheria, all transmitted through a glass of milk that looked wholesome enough to put in a painting. In eastern cities, the swill milk scandals of the 1850s through 1870s revealed milk adulterated with chalk and molasses from cows-fed distillery waste. Conditions on the frontier, with no inspection whatsoever, were arguably worse. That wholesome glass of fresh milk was a delivery system for diseases that had no cure. And the contamination loop did not stop at the well or the kitchen. It ran through the outhouse and back again. Maureen Ogle's research confirms that indoor plumbing was essentially absent in frontier settlements. Outhouses sat dangerously close to wells because boomtown lots were small and nobody understood the connection between waste and water. Human waste entered the groundwater. The groundwater was drawn from wells and consumed. The resulting illness produced more waste that further contaminated the supply. Flies bred in the open sewage and carried pathogens directly to food. The germ theory rationale for hand washing was not widely known. You used the outhouse, you ate your supper, and the connection between those two acts was invisible to you. Your outhouse was poisoning your well, and nobody understood why everyone kept getting sick. Now step outside. The mythology tells you the danger on a frontier street was the gunfight. Here is what the mythology leaves out. Dodge City, the most iconic gun town in American memory, had a gun control ordinance. Visitors were required to check their firearms upon entering town. The image of everyone walking around armed is partially a Hollywood invention, at least within organized cattle towns. But the danger on a frontier street was real. It was just different from what you imagine. Claire McKenna's study of homicide in frontier counties found per capita rates dramatically higher than contemporary eastern cities. Accidental discharges from poorly maintained firearms, stampedes, runaway horses, collapsing structures in boomtowns built fast with green lumber and no building codes. Roger McGrath's study of the mining towns of Bodie and Aurora found that while homicide rates were high, bystander injury from stray rounds and drunken altercations was a documented additional risk. The most dangerous part of walking down a frontier street was not the gunfight that probably was not happening. It was everything else. And every breath you took on that street, in that bunkhouse, in that crowded saloon, carried its own weight. Sheila Rothman documented that tuberculosis was the leading cause of death in the United States throughout the 19th century, responsible for an estimated 1 in 4 deaths. Here is the paradox that should stop you. The dry Western climate was recommended as a cure for tuberculosis. Doctors back east told their consumptive patients to go west, breathe the clean air, and heal. So they came. Thousands of them. Actively tubercular, coughing, contagious, and they filled the bunkhouses and boarding houses of frontier boomtowns. Crowded rooms, poor ventilation, shared sleeping spaces, no understanding of airborne transmission. The supposed cure made the epidemic worse. The Army Surgeon General's annual reports from the 1870s and 1880s confirm it from the military side. Gastrointestinal illness, malaria, and respiratory disease overwhelmed combat casualties at frontier posts by enormous multiples. Every breath in a crowded bunkhouse was a lottery ticket for the disease that killed 1 in 4 Americans. Your clothes carried danger too. Glenda Riley documented that frontier laundry was a grueling, infrequent ordeal. Water had to be hauled and heated. Soap was homemade and harsh. Clothing was worn for days, sometimes weeks, without washing. Body lice thrived in those unwashed fabrics, and they were not merely uncomfortable. Margaret Humphreys documented that louse-borne typhus and relapsing fever traveled on those tiny parasites. Fleas in bedding carried plague in some western regions. The shirt you put on clean this morning, pulled from a machine that washed it in hot water with commercial detergent. That simple act eliminated disease vectors that frontier settlers wore against their skin every day. A toothache. Consider that. You have a molar that has been aching for 3 days. In 2024, you call a dentist, sit in a sterile chair, get an X-ray, receive local anesthesia, and the problem is resolved with a root canal and a 10-day course of amoxicillin. In 1880, on the frontier, dental care was performed by barbers or blacksmiths. Malvin Ring's History of Dentistry and Karolowitz's Frontier Medical Accounts describe extractions done with pliers, no anesthesia, no antiseptic preparation. The extraction itself introduced bacteria into open tissue. A dental abscess, an infection at the root of a tooth, could spread to the jaw, then to the bloodstream, then to the brain. Before antibiotics, an abscess that was not successfully drained was potentially fatal. A toothache was not an appointment. It was the opening act of a potentially fatal infection with nothing on earth to stop it. And finally, the quietest danger. The most ordinary human event. A woman in labor in a frame house or a sod cabin, attended by a neighbor or a midwife with no medical training and no understanding of antisepsis. Clean cloths, boiled water, good intentions, and absolutely none of the protections that exist today. Irvine Loudon's cross-national study places American maternal mortality in the late 19th century at roughly 600 to 900 deaths per 100,000 live births. Today, that number is approximately 23. Puerperal fever, childbed fever, was caused by bacterial infection introduced during delivery by unsterilized hands. It killed women who were healthy, strong, young, and had every reason to survive. Michael Haynes's demographic analysis estimates infant mortality in the 1880s at roughly 200 per 1,000 live births nationally, with frontier rates likely higher. 1 in 5 babies born on the frontier did not survive their first year. The most natural thing a human body does was the most dangerous thing a frontier woman would ever face. Look at that list. Water, food, milk, sleep, a scratch on your hand, the air in a room, the clothes on your back, a toothache, a walk down the street, a child being born. Not one of these required bad luck. Not one required an outlaw, a war, or a disaster. These were Tuesday. These were ordinary. And any single one of them could end a life in days. The distance between your morning and theirs is not measured in years. It is measured in water filtration, in pasteurization, in a 13-cent bar of soap, and a theory about organisms no one could see. Germ theory, antisepsis, refrigeration, antibiotics, plumbing. These are not dramatic inventions. They do not make for good cinema. No one has ever made a Western about the man who sealed a well cap or the woman who boiled surgical instruments. But those are the people who closed the gap between their world and yours. Those are the victories that let you drink a glass of water tomorrow morning and never think about it. The frontier dead deserve that recognition, not as myths, not as legends, as people who lived inside systems that had not yet learned to protect them, and who paid for that absence with the ordinary acts of being alive. The records hold their names. In army surgeon reports, in territorial courthouse files, in letters folded and carried east by someone who survived. Those records are still there, and they are worth reading. If this is the kind of history that matters to you, the documented version, told with the respect the dead are owed, then stay with this channel. There are more stories in the record, specific people, specific places. The real frontier, which was stranger and harder and more human than anything Hollywood ever put on screen. We will keep going as long as the documents hold out, and they have not run dry yet.